Okay, Shalom, Shalom. First and foremost, all the holy praise, honor, glory to Yahweh. Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakwadash. The honors to the elders and honors to the apostles, preaching and teaching us this word of truth and with sincerity as always. And in this lesson, actually, I want to get into, it's feeling like going into prophecy, but I want to go into some motivations. Some motivation, and hopefully one of the elect runs and watches this video and I'm actually more happier to speak on this right now because this is something that I use, I watch every now and then, looking at history and in certain battles in history, and we are in a spiritual battle, but just looking at a certain battles in history and the underdogs and the underdog stories and whatnot, stuff like that I find very interesting and motivating and encouraging. And there's this king by the name of King Baldwin the Fourth, and when I want to bring him up and speak on him, just going into how in this fight, in this war, in this walk that we are in, we have to be courageous. It reminds me of what Yahweh Shai said to Joshua, or what the Most High told to Joshua here in the book of Joshua 1, the book of Joshua chapter 1 verse. I'll start at 1. Now after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses my servant is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, even unto the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and unto the great sea toward the going down of the sun shall be your coast. There shall not any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee, or with thee I will be with thee. I will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Be strong and be of a good courage. For unto this people shalt thou divide for an inheritance the land which I give unto their fathers to give them. Verse 7, only be thou strong and very courageous. Once again, the Lord's telling Joshua here to be very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn thou not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper wheresoever thou goest. The book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. Have I not commanded thee, be strong and of a good courage? This is the third time, by the way, that the Most High is telling this to Joshua. Now I'm trying to go back up to the first time he tells that to Joshua. In verse 7. Yeah, well, basically, the Lord tells that to Joshua like 3 times. Be strong and of good courage. Be thou strong and very courageous. And then he tells him again in verse 9. Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And just like King Baldwin wasn't afraid. This is King Baldwin the fourth. King Baldwin the fourth specifically. This was Jake Keen. He was a Judite. He was a black man. He could have looked white, but he was a Judite. Could have looked pale. As a matter of fact, he's also talked about. He's also makes a cameo in the movie Kingdom of Heaven. So this is one of the kings that I always he was played by Edward Norton, and I've looked into his story and into his exploits in military battles, and how on one account he basically defeated this great champion of war, Saladin, in battle at 16 years old. At 16 years old, this king here, he was whooping ass, man. At 16 years old, he was whooping ass. He didn't give a fuck, and he chose to fight for his city, the Jerusalem. And this was a great man right here. This was a I honestly praise this individual here, whoever he is. It doesn't really matter. I believe personally he is of the elect, but it really wouldn't matter who he is. I'll find out. We'll find out in the kingdom. I'll see in the kingdom. But I look up to this his story. His story is inspirational, and I personally do believe he is of the elect. I believe a lot of the kings in the past were the elect. They were of the elect because we are the original creators of this earth. Lord is willing if I am of the elect. We are the original creators of the earth. And throughout my, not to get too into myself, but throughout my looking into history and dabbling into history, and just with this truth along with this truth guiding me in the spirit of Yahushua and the Holy Spirit with me, I've observed that a lot of these kings and rulers of the elect, they are a lot of the kings in the past, they were of the elect. For you to not think that, for you to not believe that, you are going off and you're offending me, because that would be bullshit if what I'm saying is not true. Yahushua said we shall reign with him for 1,000 years, and that was in the first 1,000 years. Those were of the elect, of the stock of the elect. But let's go back to this Joshua 1 and verse 9. Have I not commanded thee, be strong and of a good courage, be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Yahweh thy power is with thee, whithersoever thou goest. Yeah, and I'm gonna show you some of his stories. So we gotta be like this. I'm gonna play an excerpt from this video here about this guy. And it also reminds me of what Paul said. I forgot how it goes, but I'm looking it up. I go as a soldier. 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse. Try to find it here. I can't even find it. Yeah, 2 Timothy 2 and 3. Endure suffering along with me as a good soldier in a Mashiach Yahushua. And then the KJB is way better. Something about that old English. It's way better. This is 2 Timothy 2 and 3. Thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier in a Mashiach Yahushua. Because there's accounts of this, and that's how we got to be in the spirit. You might have, we're going through shit, demons attacking us, and wicked thoughts, and being in the wicked flesh. And then and then you catch hell, and then you still go off, and you still got to catch hell. So we go through a lot of hardness, and that's why Paul says here, endure hardness as a good soldier in a Mashiach Yahushua. If I'm not mistaken, I think Paul wrote this. I'll have to, you can, I'll have to look it up, but endure hardness as a good soldier of Mashiach. That's the point. Um, that scripture there in itself is very true because we endure hardness. It's truth ain't is not an easy thing. You got temptations like woman and um, whatever is comfortable and easy to the flesh of that sort that you deny to yourself on a daily basis each week. And these are things that you have to endure, and just linking it all the way back to Baldwin here, King Baldwin the Fourth of Jerusalem. There's a photo of him there from the movie Kingdom of Heaven. There's accounts of him going to battle. Well, yeah, after he defeated Saladin at 16, afterwards there was accounts of him going to battle in a stretcher in like a bed, and they were carrying him in the bed, and he was still able to win the victory. Now, Lord willing, I'll make a part two to this because there's specific accounts and excerpts I would want to bring that bring it out more powerful than I can explain it just with my words. But yeah, there's accounts of him. Basically, he was he had the Most High with him on his side. He was praising Yahweh Ba'ashim Shai. Well, he didn't call him. Of course, he didn't call him Yahweh Ba'ashim Shai. This was when we already were far gone from our old ancient customs. We probably ate defiled foods, but they believed they had a zeal. Jake definitely had a zeal, and it wasn't like how it is today with these wicked rulers that worship God. I mean, no, they don't. They don't worship God. I don't like saying the word God, but they don't worship the true God, the true Lord. I would say Most High. They don't worship the Most High. They worship Satan. Back in these times, that you had kings that was they would sincerely believe that they had the truth, but they were genuine and sincere in what they believed. Though they weren't worshiping false idols like Satan. They sincerely believed that they were fighting for whatever the Bible said, and believed that they were doing it in the correct, proper order. There was once upon a time when that was the case. Even though they were Jakes, by the way, they were Jakes, but even though they were Jakes and they were doing that, of course, they still didn't keep the laws. Baldwin here, the fourth, wasn't keeping the law, statutes, commandments. He didn't know, probably didn't even really know the name Yahweh or Yahushua, because the scriptures say we were far from our heritage. just off that. But the fact that they went to Jerusalem and that they fought to keep Jerusalem would show that the spirit bears with us, witness with our spirit that we are the sons of the Most High. Cain Bonham was a Judite. He was definitely a Judite. He could have been a speckled bird. He was definitely a Judite, man. And there's accounts of him basically in bed. He was like this photo here shows you. He was in bed, and he made Solomon. He made Saladin. He made Saladin. Yes, like I said, Solomon. He made Saladin turn back. He made him turn back on his bed. There's accounts of him where he was blinded and he was on his bed, and he made this great big champion bets are in a war champion turn back. And there's an account of in that battle when he was 16. There's an account of him bowing to the Most High, the Almighty, and praying to the Almighty to give him the victory, and that's why he won the victory, man. Why he won the victory, man. Because there was the priests that led the cross. I know this is off. This is kind of silly, but Jake was had a zeal, man. Jake, we can't deny Israel, and Jake had a zeal, man. And whether it was the actual cross where Yahushua died in, that's allegedly that was the cross where Yahushua died in, and so they decked that with gold. It had gold on it, and they let it. Uh, Baldwin commanded that they led that in front of the battle. They would lead it the way to the battle. And this dude was a fucking badass because he controlled his horse with his knees. He couldn't use his legs because he had this disease, lepers. So he uses his knees to control his horse. And then he couldn't really feel because with the disease he had, leprosy, he could have get cut. He could have gotten cut, but he wouldn't have been able to feel it because a certain disease that he had. But um, he went to battle anyway. He went to battle anyway. He believed in Yahweh. You got to put yourself in that position, and I like to put myself in that position sometimes. And imagine not even being able to feel your legs. Not here you go, man. You're set up as the king ruler. You're 16, and you got this disease. You're slowly dying. Around this time, you still wouldn't have been able to detect any disease in this young man Baldwin the fourth, being led to battle, getting ready to go to battle. At this point, you still wouldn't have been able to have visibly look at him until he had a disease. But more later on, he's weak. His body is slow to eating itself. It's rotting away. His flesh is literally rotting away. He won't. It takes all your strength to the point where it takes all your strength, and now you actually do feel the pain now because that's how bad the disease gets. Just to lift your arms is it's like excruciating pain. But you're saying fuck it. I'm still going to go to battle with just a handful of army, horses, and men on your disposal, and you got this giant as warrior with all of these this mass amounts of army, double, triple your army size, and you're praying to the Lord. God, give us this victory, and you win the fucking battle, man. And each time he went to battle, he defeated Saladin. He defeated Saladin. Saladin was so afraid of him that even when he came in his stretcher, blind, barely able to see, blinded, not being able to move. Saladin was scared. It's not necessarily that he was scared. In one account later on, it's not necessarily that he was scared, but it's that he saw so much courage in this person that he said, "You know what? Fuck it, man. I'm not." He said, fuck this." That's so he was so amazed and impressed by that he said, you know what? I'm not gonna. I'm so he said basically he was like I'm so impressed. I'm not gonna even. What's the word I'm looking for as well? He wasn't just impressed, but he was so what's the word I'm looking for? I'm looking for it's a certain word. Can't think of it. He was so he was so impressed about how crazy that was and looked at that. He said no, I'm not gonna. He said I respect that. I respect that. I'm not even gonna fight. I'm not even gonna do anything about it. About this king right here, this man right here. So Lord was with Baldwin, man. And I just look up to that story, and I really like that story, and it's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful history.
Baldwin, Reynolds' knights, and the Templars, even though numerically inferior, executed a full frontal heavy armoured cavalry charge at the centre of Saladin's hurriedly formed battle lines, immediately inflicting heavy casualties. The impact was immediate and devastating, creating a wedge breaking the enemy formation. Saladin's troops were spread out over a large area. He was trying to organise them into 3 or 4 blocks around the hill, and Reynolds surprised him with a charge. A common tactic was to allow the Crusaders to charge, then maneuver the troops out of the way to almost let them pass through, but then surround and trap them. Saladin could have been planning to do that. Unfortunately for him, Reynold charged unexpectedly before Saladin had put all his remaining troops where he needed them. Saladin's army simply lost their formation, and the Crusader army chased them. One of Saladin's great nephews was killed, and Saladin himself was nearly killed, but he managed to escape, mounting a racing camel and rushing away to safety with only... Master Odo of the Templars cried, "Oh, for God!" That tiny army ignited like a flame from heaven, November 25th, on the road between Ramla and Jerusalem. Saladin was leading his troops through a narrow valley. His army was stretched, divided, not yet in formation, and then it happened. The thunder of hooves roared from the cliffs above. Crasher! The Crusaders charged, falling like an avalanche into the gorge. Saladin had no time, no commands, no preparation. The wrath of the cross descended on him like the flames of hell. They say Baldwin IV couldn't even sit upright, but he rode. He lifted his sword. He led the charge like a ghost of holy vengeance. He said nothing, only motioned, and plunged straight into Saladin's army. The battle raged through the afternoon. Blood rained onto the sand. Muslim horses fled in terror. Pillagers became prey. Saladin was nearly captured. He escaped only by mounting his fastest camel and fleeing into the desert. And Baldwin, though his body shook with pain, did not retreat. He ordered the pursuit. He stood in the center of the battlefield, surrounded by blood and corpses. Montgisar, just a name, until that day. From then on, it became legend. A tiny army, just a few hundred, shattered one of the strongest forces in the known world. A teenager with leprosy stopped an empire, a victory no one dared to dream. No one thought was possible. But it happened. For faith, for Jerusalem, for a king who refused to die in bed. From that day on, Saladin, a man who had never known defeat, carried one name with him, even into his dreams. Baldwin IV, the undefeated leper king of Jerusalem. After the crushing defeat at Montgisar, Saladin withdrew his army to Egypt. He did not cry. He did not scream. He said nothing, and began preparing for something that none of his enemies ever lived to see twice: a counter-strike. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, Baldwin IV still wore the crown. Still, they called him king. But with every passing day, his body was decaying. The leprosy crept from his hands into his joints, up to his face. No one dared look into his eyes too long. No one dared shake his hand, not out of fear, but out of sorrow. And yet, it was Baldwin himself who never pitied his own fate. He knew Saladin would return, and when he did, he would come with the force of a desert storm. So, amid festering wounds and relentless pain, Baldwin made a decision to build a new fortress. Its name was Jacob's Ford, on the Jordan River between Syria and Galilee. A thorn shoved straight into the throat of the Islamic Empire. Saladin understood this. He sent envoys to Jerusalem, offering 60,000 dinars, just to make Baldwin stop. The leper king refused. Saladin raised the offer to 100,000. Baldwin still shook his head. Nothing could buy his will to defend the holy city. And so, war began again. June 1179, at Marj Ayun, Saladin struck back without warning. The Frankish army, fresh from a small victory, was resting, collecting spoils. No formation, no defenses. Saladin descended like fire from the mountains. Odo, Grand Master of the Templars, was killed. Many nobles captured. Baldwin, now too weak to ride, had to be carried off the field by his knights in a whirlwind of chaos. From the glory of Montgisar to a stretcher carried by 4 men, his vision blurred, his arm useless, his skin rotted so deeply that even the lightest touch made him cry out in pain. But Saladin didn't wait. He marched his full army to Jacob's Ford, and in just 5 days the fortress fell. The soldiers inside, even those who surrendered, were butchered or sold into slavery. Jerusalem had lost its northern defense. Hope began to collapse. Villages near Galilee evacuated in panic. Baldwin could barely even hold a sword. And yet, he still returned to the field, blind in one eye, unable to sit upright, no longer able to eat solid food, surviving only on liquids. His legs were so deformed. His attendants had to bind his knees with wood and leather to keep the bones from breaking. Still, He gave orders. Still, he received diplomats. Still, he prepared for a final confrontation that everyone thought was suicide, because Baldwin knew the truth. Saladin had been reborn. His new army was even larger than at Montgisard. And this time, he wouldn't retreat. There was only one goal now: the Holy City, Jerusalem. And only one question remained. Can a man who can no longer stand stop the war horses of a god of war? The year was 1183. The mighty fortress of Kerak stood tall amid the desert of Moab, a bastion dividing Syria and Egypt. The only lifeline for Saladin's armies to move troops and supplies. To hold Kerak was to split the Muslim Empire in half, and the man who held it was none other than Reynald de Chatillon, Baldwin's most trusted, yet most reckless ally. But Reynald was a wild man. He cared nothing for treaties, respected no oaths, and this time he shattered the truce by attacking a Muslim caravan during the holy month of Hajj. Among the travelers was Saladin's own sister. It was the final straw. Had become hell, and just as everyone knelt in desperate prayer, a message struck the gate like lightning. The king is coming! Baldwin IV. By now, he was completely blind. His limbs twisted and mauled by disease. He had to be tied to a stretcher with leather and bronze cords. And still, he led an army to rescue Kerak. No one believed it, until a tiny force appeared on the horizon. Through the desert haze, the cross banner flapped in the wind, and there, on a stretcher, among the knights, was a body that no longer looked alive, but the dry eyes still burned with unbreakable will. When Saladin heard the news, he was stunned, not afraid, but speechless. A king on the brink of death, without hands, without feet, unable even to speak clearly, had returned to the battlefield. Saladin gave the order. Retreat. The siege of Kerak ended, without a single sword being drawn. They say, when Baldwin reached the gates of the fortress, the people wept. The guards threw down flags in gratitude. The bride, once sure she would die on her wedding day, knelt at the king's stretcher and whispered, God sent you. You didn't die. The kingdom still stands, and Baldwin just nodded. He said nothing, but the effort took its toll. Returning from the field, his health collapsed. His bones began to bleed through the skin. Doctors were helpless. Priests began preparing for the funeral, but Baldwin refused to die because he knew, before he met death, he had one last task: to pass the crown.
When I was 16, I won a great victory. I felt in that moment I would live to be 100. Now I know I shall not see 30. None of us know our end, really, or what hand will guide us there. A king may move a man. A father may claim a son. That man can also move himself. And only then does that man truly begin his own game. Remember that howsoever you are plagued, by whom, your soul is in your keeping alone.
So with that, brothers, I hope you this was inspirational. And that's how we gotta be in the spirit, basically. And there's an account of him praying to the Lord to give him the victory, along with the Mount Gazard along under that Mount Gazard battle before the battle erupted. This is Joshua 1 again, verse 6. Be strong and of good courage, for unto this people shall I divide for an inheritance the land which I swear unto their fathers give them. Only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or the left, that thou mayest prosper whithersoever thou goest. Jumping down to verse 9. Have I not I commanded thee, be strong and of good courage? Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy power is with thee, whithersoever thou goest. And King Baldwin there, he wasn't afraid. He knew that basically he knew that whatever he might have called him, but that he knew that Yahweh Shai and the Spirit was going to be with him in the battle. Whoever that man is, Baldwin is, I'm sure if he were to have if he was to be here today and he were to ask him, he would be like, yeah, I was Shai with me there in that battle. And this is Luke 1, because those were that what he did would have been impossible, but this the Lord worked it out to where this is what happened. So with the Lord, nothing's impossible. Luke 1 and 37. For with Yahweh, nothing shall be impossible. And he got the victory because the Lord knew his heart. The Lord knew he was with him. Now, in certain cases, the Lord can look out for you, and he looks out for even the wicked regardless, even though they don't keep the laws and they don't have the zeal for him. But in this case, Baldwin was with Yahweh Shai, but he believed. Whatever he might have called him, he didn't call him that, but he had a zeal. Like Jake was gone from his inheritance, but even in that, with all that being said, with all that, the Lord came through for performed a miracle with this brother here, this king here, and just found it inspirational. I find the story very motivating and inspirational. It's such an underdog story, like with King David and Goliath, and I just find this story very humbling too, because to having a disease like that and then to die, he died very young, but he fought for Jerusalem. He fought for a Mashiach, or we probably called it Christ, but he fought for the name of Christianity, which is a way more righteous kingdom than what Esau has today. And he stood on that. He stood on his business on that. He went to battle each and every time, though he was paralyzed in a weak body. And so that's how we gotta be in the spirit. We have these weak bodies where we're fighting giants, but we're calling on Yahweh Shai to give us the victory, to make the all the odds stacked impossible odds stacked against us to our advantage. Because Yahweh Shai was hated and despised and underlooked. You also have Samson, you had Gideon, Jehu. I think that was his name. And so the Lord's gonna look out for us, man. Hopefully this was very inspirational and motivating to the elect. Just wanted to make this mainly a motivation. Hopefully it did the job. Shalom.